Hey, it's Chrissy and Amanda.
Two girls from Saskatchewan, Canada, living the Reiki life while working the 9 to 5.
Hey all, welcome back. You are here with Christy and Amanda and maybe my daughter Callie, if you can hear her, sorry. We're still at that exclusively nursing stage and we tried to give her a bottle and she's just not taking it. So she gets to join us on the pod just for a little while here. So today we have a really awesome episode. We sat down with really two great women, Linda Sanderson and Flo Lavallie, and to talk about the Tamara House. And I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer about the audio. We tried to record this. We actually re-recorded this because some of the audio was just not working for whatever reason. And then even with the re-record, it still kind of is fuzzy in some places. So I really tried to clean it up. Bear with us. This is such a good topic and it really needs to be shared. And so just kind of, they're just little fuzzy spots. So you'll definitely get the whole idea of the episode because it is very good.
Yeah. I'm so excited to share this with the community because our podcast reaches in so many corners. And Flo is just such a well-known person like in Saskatoon and Saskatchewan for her healing work over the years. And I think it's just so cool that we can honor her legacy and have this conversation and just share her wisdom. And we're just so grateful to have her back with us because this is the second time that she's with us. And so I just want to talk about what the Tamara House is. That's the topic of this episode today. And it's a nonprofit healing and support space in Saskatoon. Well, it was. It's no longer running, but it was for survivors of sexual abuse, and it was they focused on like holistic, community-based healing. And Reiki was actually a big part of the healing with the women, which is very fascinating because this was quite a while ago. Like, Reiki wasn't a thing, it was a thing, but it wasn't as common as it is today. So yeah, it's just such a great, I just feel so honored to share this space with Flo today and just be able to share her wisdom, and Linda as well. It was so great to meet Linda and have her story heard as well. And yeah.
And this was the first of its kind in Canada. So it was like a really big deal, you guys. I couldn't believe it. And the really sad thing is that this house you would think would have been around like maybe the 80s. No, it was only like the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wild that only something like this is still, and that doesn't seem far from me, but I guess it's 26 years ago, but right? Like the 2000s just seem like yesterday.
Yeah, they
so
do.
You get close to 40. But yes, so enjoy this episode. And we will link Flo's episode that we recorded with her in our show notes. So you can catch the first recording where we talked about iridology and her Reiki journey and her holistic health as well.
Yeah, that was such a great episode too. If you're curious about iridology, it blows my mind. It's super fascinating. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy.
So I am back with Flo Lavallie. We had her on the podcast previously, and if you haven't listened to that episode, we will link it down in our show notes so you can have a listen to that. And we are also joined with her friend Linda Sanderson. And Linda and Flo both grew up in Canada and played a huge role in the making of the Tamara House, which we will get into what that is and how it was important here in Saskatoon. But we're just going to talk a little bit about Linda and her background and what it was like growing up Indigenous in Saskatchewan. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about that. I know it can be a kind of a sensitive topic for some, but it is really important to know our history and to have awareness around the whole topic. So welcome, Linda. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I grew up on Pepeeksies First Nations. That's where I'm originally from. I had tuberculosis when I was 3 months old, and I was put in the Fort Sand till I was in there for 2 years. And I came out, and my parents gave me to my mom's sister. And so I grew up on a little blackberry reserve until I was 13. My dad was a big farmer, so my whole life has pretty much been mostly white because my dad was First Nations, but he mostly associated with the white farmers. So, and then of course the residential school. At that time, my foster brothers went to residential school. My youngest brother and myself, we didn't go. We stayed on the reserve, and the Indian agents would try and come out and scoop us. And my dad would chase them off. Didn't feel the racism that much because we got, well, I don't know. I guess we got along really well with the white students in school. We did go to school when I first started on the reserve. It was a one-room schoolhouse, and then we went into town. And when I was 13, my foster mom died when I was 10. So when I was 13, I moved home to Regina to be with my real parents. And my real dad didn't allow us to have First Nations friends. So, I had First Nations friends, but we had to sneak around to be with them because of partly the fear of the residential school with them because they went. And my siblings went. I was fortunate. I didn't go, but a lot of the abuse that I suffered was at the hands of people that went to residential school. So I only lived with them till I was 17, and then I ran away from home at 17, came up to Saskatoon, became a single mom at 18, and been on my own ever since. My whole world has been in the white world, all of it. I didn't grow up with my language or the culture. So I did my first 2 years when I was 21 doing my social work. And because I was drinking and doing drugs, I didn't bother finishing. So I packed up lock, stock, and barrel. I always worked since I was 17. And so I packed up everything, sold everything, and moved to Victoria to start my healing journey when I was 8. And took like 4 suitcases and I was gone. And so I started my journey, my healing journey out there, and came back and went and got my decade of 30 was about healing. So I went into counseling for the first 4 years of inner child healing, and had my second son when I was 25. Single mom, went through the whole pregnancy alone, and didn't meet my husband until my son was 8 years old. Yeah. So 4 years old, 8. He was, he was 8. He was short. He was the size of a 5-year-old. That's why I say that. He was very small. So, so then and then I went back and got my degree when I was 40. And I did my practicum with Tamara's House when they were in the Night Owl, top of Night Owl. So they were just in um, the meetings and the planning of Tamara's House at that particular time. And so, and then when it came about, that's when I got hired on at Tamara's House the very first year.
So I want to back up quickly. When you went to BC to start your healing,
Right.
what did that look like for you? What kind of healing were you taking on?
I went into inner child healing. I worked with a therapist that was a sexual abuse survivor, so that was my healing.
Okay.
So I started as major from the time I was 2 till I was 29 years old.
Okay. And was it like traditional kind of healing therapy?
No.
Was it spiritual? What is it really?
For me, it's spiritual
Yeah.
because I grew up spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, on her part, no, not on the therapist part. But for me, thanks to my foster dad, he's the one that gave me that spirituality. I didn't grow up with my culture, but I grew up off the land, and you learn spirituality by working the land. really do, because you're at the mercy of God for everything. And that's what my dad gave me. So the whole thing, like when I was down, when I went to BC, and I always dreamed of mountains, but never, I didn't even come to the city till I was 13. So it was just all small town prairies, and I always dreamed of mountains. So when I went out and did my healing out there and I came back, and my very first elder was Laura Wasakase, and I was telling her about it, of, I did a group of women, and I was the only First Nations. Well, no matter what I've done, it's always been, I was the only First Nations person in these groups. And I did art therapy. So we had to draw our safe place. And my safe place was always in the mountains up on the hill where I could see everything around me, right? And so I was telling Laura that, and she was saying, Mother Earth, the mountains are Mother Earth's breasts. And that made so much sense because I've never had a mother. That really made so much sense. And then the water is so powerful. Yeah. That's where I sit at the ocean every day, and that's where I do my journaling. And yeah, and just the power of that.
And water is so healing.
Yeah.
But even using that act of visualizing yourself, not even
Mhm.
ever physically being there,
Yeah.
was enough for your brain to comfort you.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good for anyone else who
Yeah.
would need something like that.
And then I went, and I used to have a dream of being in a funnel, and I was only like, the funnel was so massive that I was just a speck on it. And I knew it was a bottomless pit, and I dreamt this my entire life. So I'd wake up and just with terror. And I dreamt of it until I was about 16 when I finally left home, right? And then I quit. And it was because of I came that close. When I started working at Tamara House and started learning about multiple personalities, that's how close I came to changing, because I would always go someplace else in my mind, but I never allowed myself to fully engulf that. That's what that was for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I went to a literacy conference through Tamara's House, and I learned, because I struggled through all my academic years, university, everything. I felt extremely stupid, not just mild, extreme. So everything was very, very difficult for me. And so I struggled, and I wound up getting my degree. But I didn't know until I went to this literacy conference after I got my degree that the abuse has affected my learning. And I didn't know how that was connected. Yeah. So
The body and the mind plays a role in shutting down, probably, like when that's happening, and it just affects.
Oh, yeah.
your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And especially when you're living in that state for as many years as you did,
Yeah.
that would be the default first, and almost untraining that part of your brain.
Mhm.
So you ended up getting your degree then in social
Yes.
work. That's
Yes.
wonderful.
Mhm.
Help others after
Yeah. Yeah.
your healing.
Yeah.
So how long were you out in BC for?
4 years.
2 years. And then you moved back to Saskatchewan.
It's home. Yeah, it's home. I missed the four seasons. I did. It's like um I missed the first 3 weeks. I missed BC, wanting to run back. And I went back 10 years after the fact. I finally went back, and I absolutely hated it.
Really?
I did. I was there for 2 weeks. 1 week was plenty. I wanted to come home.
And that's really interesting because they say it with people who've experienced like even addictions, they need to be removed from the environment to help turn off the habits and get them out of the situation. So you coming back feeling pretty good about coming back,
Mhm.
I find that really interesting that you didn't associate here with maybe the abuse that you could have.
It was like coming back. It was like coming back to the scene of the crime for sure.
Yeah.
The smell, the air, because you don't get the air that blows through your ears.
Yeah.
And so it was like coming back to the scene of the crime. That's how it literally felt for me. And it felt like I didn't do a whole lot of healing.
Right.
So it made me work all the harder.
Oh, wow.
It really did, because I knew I did not ever want that lifestyle.
Right.
I knew, like, during the drugs, that's why I did what I did,
Mm-hmm.
because I was running. And I didn't want to run. I didn't want to have skeletons in my closet. Um, so yeah, so I worked even harder.
Yeah. And that's exactly the main cause usually of most addictions. My spouse is actually going to be 11 years sober this May, and we were talking. He's like, I wonder if I could have. He's like, I wouldn't, but because he's now dealt with a lot of the abuses that he dealt with, it wasn't sexual abuse, but different, physical abuse. He's like, I wonder now, because I'm not running away from that, if I could handle it. But who wants to test that out to see?
My son tried that with me. He says, Mom, you've been sober for a long time. He says, one won't hurt you. He says, you know what? I don't even need it
Yeah.
anymore.
Mhm.
I like who I am. I can have fun without it. I don't have to mask it with anything.
That's when you know you've succeeded.
Yeah.
I think Robin Williams talks about that too, actually. He says, if you need drugs and alcohol to enjoy life, you're doing something wrong. Like you're not developing the whole.
Yeah.
And I agree with that completely. Why test it? It's poison in your body. Like it's just so social sometimes. But so that's good. So you got your degree, and then you and Flo. So how did the Tamara House actually start? Like what? And we'll get into this too with Flo too. But what was the first even? How did it even become an idea?
That was in the making, I think 10 years before I even came on the scene, before I
Okay.
even knew about it. I just heard stories of them 10 years of the board getting together and praying and crying because there was no money,
Mm,
right? And some of the staff sometimes didn't get paid, but they stayed.
wow.
Yeah.
So did you come on as a social worker to help?
I came on and did my practicum with them.
Okay.
Yeah, because it takes one to know one, right? So I knew about sexual abuse. And so, and they only had just a day programs then. They didn't have women would come, and there was one big room at that time, right? And they just had their couches and like little makeshift kitchenette, and where the women can sleep or they can socialize. And it was really small, but that's where I did my practicum.
Wonderful. And I think a lot of women or people who have had abuse appreciate it when someone can kind of understand. Obviously, we can't fully understand exactly what they've gone through because it's different than what you've gone through, but you can at least meet them somewhere where someone who's never had that, comes in and wants to listen and help people. It's like you can get the emotional part of what others can't give.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, doing the First Nations part when we were in there, we did the full moon ceremonies. We've did the smudging, sweats. We've taken them out to sweats with Irene Fraser. She owned her own.
And tell us about the importance of what a sweat does to somebody.
That's going back into your mother's womb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, every time I've ever went, I always carry my children with me in there. Like I never went for myself. When I always went to ceremony, I've never went for me. I went to bring other people. I would, bring tobacco offering or cloth offering and do prayers for for my kids.
You would energetically think of them when they were okay. Yeah, you wouldn't physically bring them.
No.
I think a sweat would actually be really intense for kids because it's very hot.
Yeah, it depends on some. Like some have it really hot, some don't. And the thing is, the one thing nice is that you're not forced to stay through all 4 rounds. You can do as much as you can.
Right.
No.
Why?
They're already in ceremony.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I always found that very interesting.
Yeah, you're already in ceremony.
Okay. Because I know when women or people go and do ayahuasca, a different kind of plant ceremony, they're not allowed to be on their cycle either because they're already in ceremony.
Already. And women are at their most powerful time with the Creator.
Right.
You can take the men's energy from them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's why.
Right.
Yeah. So,
And women used to sit in red tent and bleed into the earth. Like it was a way to really give back into the earth, right? We don't do that, unfortunately, anymore. I mean, or maybe some do. I didn't grow up with that culture. But you're right. It is a very powerful time.
yes, and it took me all those years of I grew up with it, growing up, looking at it as very healthy.
Oh, yeah. Well, society does not help with that.
Yes, and and coming close to the end of my time, it was like I missed out
Oh, I know.
of the way First Nations people view it.
Oh,
It's such a beautiful time.
yeah.
And so I literally grieved when my time was done.
Oh,
I grieved it. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like getting a period too. I do. I think it's a beautiful thing. And it just feels like I'm energetically shedding, not just having a bleed.
Yeah.
To let that cycle go and a fresh start every time. I know. I'm excited to celebrate that with my daughter because I think it's really important.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So you worked and did your practicum at the Tamara House helping women do counseling. And we'll get into more of what the Tamara House is. I feel like we're not explaining it yet, but
Yeah.
we got Flo in the
Yes.
running.
Yes.
Yeah. So talk to me more, just because we are a Reiki podcast, talk more about a little bit about like the energy healing and things like that you would help with your. I love how we have um the science of what, getting your social work practicum and degree mixed with like the indigenous spirituality and culture and just because I'm sure a lot of the women that went to the Tamara House probably taught you some things about their culture. Oh, right. Yeah. So what other kind of let's talk a little bit about that and just
What I've learned having my degree is it doesn't apply
mm,
to people. It's just a piece of paper.
yeah.
None of it applies because we're not books, we're humans. They missed the human part of it all. Of so I just wound up getting the degree to just finish to close a chapter in my life. That was it. And I wound up doing my first level in Reiki. I stumbled across Reiki before I even entered Tamara's house. I think I went to they had what they called them, like an expo.
Health Expo.
Yes, at Prairie Land. And I think it was Darlene McGrath. Darlene, she's a Reiki master. And she was there. And I says, I want to go try this Reiki. And I suffered with migraines for since I was 18 till in my 40s. And I had this migraine. And I went to her for Reiki. And all she did was put her hands around my head. And literally, I could see this puff of smoke swirling in my head, going forward towards my eyes and back to the back of my head. It was swirling like that. And it came out the center of my forehead. It was like a puff of smoke that came out. And I says, it's gone. And so that was my first experience with Reiki. And so I went, we were at Tamara's house, I wound up getting my first level in Reiki. And that was it, just to work on my family. I didn't have a desire to go full bloom into any of that. So yeah, that was my experience with it.
And I always say, if you're a mom, get your level 1 so you can work on your kids.
Yeah.
Work on yourself. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. And then did you ever work on women at the Tamara House with Reiki?
No, because your first level is only
yes, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Was there any other healing modalities? You said you did smudge. You did circles?
Sharing circles. We did. I've tried the massage therapy as well. That was awesome. Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember the lady that she was a nurse at that time.
Aroma massage therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She couldn't possess the Reiki, but when I went for my session with her, her hands were just hot. And I wound up like it. You could feel the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual component. Same with Reiki. When I went to a Reiki master, I felt all four working, and same with the aroma massage. With this particular woman, all four. And I asked her, I says, "How come your hands are so hot?" And she says, she says, it was in the middle of the night. This bolt of lightning shot through her. She woke up, just sat in bed, and she goes, "Never since then, my hands have been hot."
Sounds like she had her own awakening and just surged her on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love a good story like that. How did that start for you? Wow.
They were both doing this research at Tamara's house at the time because they couldn't possess either one. They had to have just that, right?
Wow.
Yeah. I know the women at Tamara's house. You seen a change. There was a calm, a peace about them. Some were coming off their meds that I noticed.
That's a big deal.
It is huge because they were just medicated they were just zombies.
Yeah.
Medicated, right?
So that doesn't help the root of the problem.
So yeah, I seen the results of that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think it's really important to have people like you who come and, share their time and just get on a level with other people that is relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I do today. I have done frontline work with pretty much all the nonprofits in town. And I retired last December out of the Y, doing frontline work there. And I'm still with the Y. I'm one of their elders. And I work mostly now in their new department, the apartment building that they opened. So I do a lot of, I'm going to start doing one-on-ones with the women. And we do ceremony there as well.
Oh, that's good. So you're still working with women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, when you enjoy it, it doesn't really feel too much like work, does it?
No, it does not at all.
Yeah. And you're keeping community that way, which is one thing that I absolutely love about you and Flo. You've always been such a huge part of community. It really inspired actually me and Christy when we met and sat down. She was saying, we need to do more with like community things, Yeah.
Yeah.
We've come so confined into our house and be separate. So it's really,
And what I find is that I just opened myself to the Y to do one-on-one with the women because counseling is too expensive.
Yeah.
You're only allowed so many sessions and then no money.
Right.
For single moms, on assistance, there is no money for them to achieve counseling. So I just offered to come in and just do it.
Is there one or a particular story that sticks with you that made an impact in your life with helping someone?
Um, There's a lot. There's a lot of them actually. One in particular, if you listen to the Women of Distinction Awards, that's going to be happening on Friday. Her name is Summer. She was at the line. She down and out, lost her kids. Yeah, brought her kids back. Like you need to listen to her story this Friday. It's, the women at the Y are amazing, where they take women that have hardcore drug users, girls that you see that people just pass on the street, and they just shower them with love. It's just, yeah, that was one of the best organizations I've ever worked for, is the Y. And so I'm so grateful to be a part of it today. Still, And so I've just offered to come in and do one-on-ones with the girls. I don't want to be paid. I says, I want these women to be a success. They have a 2 years window here to come out and to be better than they've ever been. And I want to help them along the way to be that. Right? It's not about money. People is not always about money. It irritates me.
I wonder, if she would have been able to do it without the support of community backing her. I know the Tamara House, unfortunately, isn't a thing anymore in Saskatoon, but it's good that there's at least these other programs that are still running.
Yeah. It's pretty close to Tamara's house. Pretty close.
Yeah. Good. So that's really good to hear. Well, thank you so much for telling your story and being vulnerable. And it's so inspiring for others too. And being in this work, and there's a lot of Reiki practitioners, of course, that listen to this, but some that aren't, or some that are interested in it. And it's just like you have that desire for a reason and to reach out to help others and lean into it
Mm.
because it's so fulfilling. It really is. And I even say, I feel more fulfilled when I give Reiki to someone else than when I do self Reiki. It almost does something to my inner being more. I tell people, take level 2, then you'll really feel good. I'm like, yeah, it's really good. So thank you so much, Linda. Yeah.
And then there's okay, so I got involved with Tamara's House. My daughter was sexually abused by her father, and it took me 4 years to get it to court. Basically, the court basically gave her the strength to speak her voice. She was on the stand for 4.5 hours, but became very, very strong because of it. And then she said to the judge, "Can I whisper it in your ear?" And he said, "No, you have to tell these people." And that basically gave her the power to share her experience. The only thing I saw at that time, which I'll speak about later, is a screen because she saw her perpetrator. And but as a result of all of that, then it went to Queen's Bench Court. In those days, it's King's now. But as a result of that, she felt that she needed an advocate because she had cerebral palsy. So she basically felt that I was the lawyer. So she said, "Mom, why can't you advocate for me?" And it's that miscommunication or that communication that didn't occur, that I couldn't speak her truth. It had to come from her, so that was very disconcerting for her. But in any case, then the woman that you see on that paper there basically invited me to come to Tamara's House to be a voice for the women that were sexually abused as children. And because of the mouthpiece that I am. And so basically then I took the bull by the horns and decided that I had to heal my anger towards the court system, and I had to heal my anger throughout for the anger of what had happened to my daughter, and also that she was helpless and couldn't advocate for herself. So as a result of that, then therefore I felt that we needed a facility. So I basically I've been to the legislature 6 times. And finally, they heard I was invited to go to the budget hearing, and I got $300,000 from the budget. And it was really interesting because the media was there, and the health minister the finance minister rather, came through the media, came to me, gave me a hug, and said, "You got your money." And so we drove back to Saskatoon and we couldn't tell the board right away, the rest of the board, that we got the money. So, and it was for the psychodramatic body work, it was for Reiki, and it was for aroma massage therapy. So as a result of that, then therefore, we basically got enough money to do all that work. And so 600 women went through the process of healing, and they could choose whatever modality that they wished. And then I basically went to a builder here in Saskatoon in construction, and he basically gave me $89,000 or $90,000 to negotiate a property. So here I am flying all over Saskatoon looking for a house and property. And so we went all over Saskatoon. And then one of the realtors came to me and said, we've got 3 75-foot lots that you could negotiate. So it was a little house over on Victoria Avenue that had grass growing through the windows on the bottom from the basement. I thought, well, this is going to be nice. So anyway, basically, we negotiated, or I negotiated that one night, and I sat double-legged on my bed, and I phoned the realtor, and I said, okay, I'll offer you $87,000. So anyway, he went back to the people that owned it, and they said, we'll take it. So then the fellow that did the construction was up in the air, flying up somewhere, and I phoned him, and I said, I got 3 75-foot lots for $87,000. And he said, do you want to come work for me? So anyway, as a result of that, therefore, it became my project, I guess. And so I was a board member for 9 years. And it should have been an 8-year position. But because I still had the landscaping to do after 8 years, and I'd go there once a week to make sure that all of the services were there. And then in the meantime, the gentleman passed away. So his funeral was here in Saskatoon, and all the collection from the funeral was given to Tamara's House to buy all of the appliances. So then I went to different places and got appliances. And so then then I was elected to do the grand opening, and here we are. So basically, I took this newsletter with me everywhere I went. When I applied, I asked for knives and forks, and I asked for dishes, and I asked for everything. And then even the curtains in the windows and from Hunter Douglas, basically. I went all over the place, trying to negotiate all of this. And so with this one newsletter, so that was my lucky charm. So anyway, as a result of that, then therefore, then we had the grand opening, which this house right here. And so there was 200 people that came to the grand opening, and then we talked about the harmony song. So once we started the process, then what happened is it was for non-Native women were invited to come, but there was nothing for First Nations women. So then I had to go on the hunt and basically applied. I found an application for the Aboriginal Healing Foundation. So I got $872,000 from the Aboriginal Healing Foundation to do the Harmony Song project. And that's basically what Linda talked about, is the naming of the project for First Nations women. So I went to braid flooring, and when I picked up the flooring, and I said, I need a medicine wheel in the middle of the healing room. So we had a healing circle in the middle of the room. So, and that's where a lot of the First Nations women would feel comfortable sitting in a circle, and that's where ceremonies were held and that type of thing. So then we had to do a reassessment about every $10,000 that you spent. You had to report back to the Healing Foundation as to what you've accomplished and how you use that money. And then the second time we applied, I basically looked at having a Dene elder, a Métis elder, and a Cree elder. And so then we brought in, there was only 8 beds. So then we had to circulate the women according to the needs of the referrals that we would get. And they were only for women that were survivors of childhood sexual abuse under 16. Yeah. And so the research that we did, then of course we wanted to do some research here because we also want to find out how many women in Saskatchewan and Canada had been sexually abused. And it's 1 out of 3. And 1 out of every 5 to 7 men. So out of that research basically came all of these results. And so one of the things I think was the colors that we wear. So we don't wear red and we don't wear black in the facility because, or even in my clinic as a practitioners. So when I go to conferences, I always speak to young practitioners about wearing different colors. So, and the reason for that is because they're called colors and they get observed on St. Patrick's Day or All Saints Day and Christmas and those type of things. So at Tamara's house, we had a safe place for them to come and celebrate, amongst themselves and for safety. So that's one of the things. The other thing is the color of your room should be very pale colors. Much like these colors. And so they're very soft colors. Yeah. And then the other thing is when a client comes in a clinical placement, the survivor walks in first and then you walk in second. So because for safety, because they basically need to see the environment. And not that they're sort of driven into one place. Like it's not like a herd of cattle or a herd of cats, And so it's for the comfort of that individual. So that came out of the research.
And what was with the colors? Why not red or black?
They're called colors. And they're used for different in different ritual, and they're basically celebrated on saints' days or Christmas or Easter or whatever, and so they're given up. And we had one gal that worked at Tamara's house that was taken off the playground at 6 years old, and then she would be offered to the cults, and then she would come home or come to a safe place at nighttime. So then, therefore, she would go back to the cult. Go back to the cult at nighttime and go to Tamara's house for safety during the day. And then we also had, it was interesting, when I drove to Tamara's house, they put notes on my windshield and say, we don't want you on our street. And so in that binder that you see there, there's different articles that I was in the newspaper regularly to basically advocate for this housing because it was the first of its kind in Canada. And so therefore, not in my neighborhood, not in my community, So therefore, we had to have a tea party and I wore my red power suit. And basically answered to a lot of angry people in the community. But there were other people in the background that would basically say, you're welcome here. And one social worker at the back of the room said, we would like to invite you to stay here and I'd mow the lawn for you, So they would offer their services. Excuse me.
There was some support.
Yeah.
And what did they think was going on in the house that they didn't like?
They asked me about when they phoned me. They would program their phone to phone me every hour on the hour. And one fellow said to me, "What are you going to do with the whores and the prostitutes?" And I said, "What did Jesus turn Mary Magdalene away?" And I remember Louise Half said to me, she said, "Whatever made you think so quick?" And I said, because I was raised in a convent or residential school. And so therefore, it was on the tip of my tongue. But it's interesting when you have to be part of a community that basically doesn't accept you. You have to justify it. We had to go to City Hall to get rezoned. And I mean, it's quite a process. Yeah. And I was alone because of the fact that, I started something that I had to finish.
Yeah. That's incredible. Just like your strength to go after everything and just get the ball rolling. I really admire that within you. And just the difference that you would have made in those people's lives. Like,
And I also think that when you're advocating for others, it's people with no voice,
yeah.
you know? And of course, I mean, when you look universally, with the high statistics, people have been quieted all these years for shame, guilt, fear,
Mhm.
and then a lot of people don't know how to deal with it when it occurs,
Yeah.
and they see sexual abuse as just penetration, but it's not just penetration. It has other connotations. And so therefore, as a result of that, then therefore it brings on a whole different genre, in communities. Because now you have not only the First Nations community, but everyone as a whole, even the two-spirited women, the two-spirited men, you know what I'm saying? So therefore, it's inclusive, and you can't just separate them, and so that's why I think that this project was one of a kind.
Yeah.
So the research also basically, when we had a lot of women come to us, they were wearing diapers. And so they basically, their reproductive system basically was affected. We were collecting bags, plastic bags. I remember going there with 3 big bags of just plastic bags. So for diapers, soiled diapers. We had a lot of women with eating disorders. And so when we provided food for them, it was difficult for them to sit at a table to have a meal with everyone because it's not familiar. And I can remember going up north to Mississippi, and there was no table, and the bed mattresses were on the floor, and there was a pot of porridge on the floor with a spoon in it. So people didn't even have, and the children didn't even have food, and so a table to sit at. So, I think that it was a lot of the women, when I worked at Westside Community Clinic, I worked with a switch program, another program I was been involved with, and a lot of the women there didn't even have cutlery to eat with. They had a stove that had only had one burner, perhaps, that worked. The other thing we never think about is light bulbs. You can't buy one light bulb.
Yeah.
And if you can't buy a package, you go without lights.
Yeah.
So we would have a women's programming night, and so therefore we had 200 women attend, and we had purses. We collected purses for all these women, and so we had personal items in the purse, and then we had, I said, make sure you got a light bulb in there, and let there be light. But these are simple things that we never think about.
Oh, never.
These are different than underwear. I go to Walmart and get packages and I drop them off at the shelters here.
Yeah.
Because I go by the shelter when I see my daughter every Sunday, and I drop off, all these underwear. And I remember hats. When my husband passed away 2 years ago, he had hats of every description. So I took them all there, laid them all out, and before I left this shelter, they were all gone. So we are basically living in a culture where we've been given so much, and we don't share.
Yeah.
So I think this is it has to be inclusive. And then too, we have people that come from other countries that have never had any immunizations. They've never had any, I spoke at the Take Back the Night March here in Saskatoon with a police officer, and women stood up and talked about female castration. It still goes on. And these women, that's another form of abuse. And the grandmothers were doing this, it's part of the culture. So I think we need to really take a look at the basics of who we are, what we're about, and not be shy to talk about these things. When I did, Reiki when I got the funding from the budget. I got $300,000 from the budget for Reiki and aroma massage and psychodramatic bodywork.
Was that taken? Was that received well? Like, Reiki probably would have been as known.
Oh no, there's a lot of women that touching is an issue. So we had one woman that wore a necklace saying, "I don't touch and I don't shake hands."
Oh.
Yeah.
And so she now has a job, by the way. She works in a job and she still wears her necklace that says we don't shake hands, But and when you do a Reiki treatment, that's another thing that I always suggest to young practitioners is the fact that ask for permission to touch.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that we need to really bring that to the forefront for women.
That's the best part about some people, yeah. They don't even have to be a victim of such abuse, but they just might not like it. And people need to respect that.
See, I have that on my intake form. My clients come to my clinic, and then all my students that I've taught, I give them that form that, have you ever had an unwanted sexual experience? That came out of the research. So it was really beneficial. And the other thing is to find out what their needs are. A lot of women, menopause was another thing. Childbirth is another thing. They stop dilating at 8 centimeters. Women that have been sexually abused. And that's why you have babies with cone heads. So, there's a lot to know about, when I birthing, and I get called at all kinds of times of the day and night. And so it's really interesting to know what the side effects are because, these people end up getting married and having babies but the thing is during birthing, it's a flashback. It's a trigger. So at 8 centimeters, they usually stop dilating. So that's where, again, I usually do the Reiki, and that helps to relax. I had one woman that I was called, and the nurse came to her and said, "You're not the first woman to have a baby." So I got there, and don't you know, I had to feed her this awful jello, and I had to feed her all this crap. Anyway, she's just relaxed because she knew that I was there, someone familiar. Not because it was me, but it was because someone familiar was there. And all of a sudden, I checked her, and she was red. You could see the head. So then I went back to this nurse, and I said to her, "She's ready to put up in stirrups." And she said, "She can't be." She said, "I was just there." And I said, "I'm telling you that sure enough." And we're putting the stirrups up, and there was the baby. I was back in my clinic before 1 o'clock. So these are the kinds of things I think that we need to be aware of. We also have to think about the drug addict. They're people too. And so a lot of them basically come and they have, we have to put them on IV right away because of the fact that they have blood sugar issues or they have withdrawal issues. So that's where Reiki is really comforting as well for the baby. But, there's so many reasons here. And then we have a lot of addictions now. So that's where basically, I feel more comfortable in letting them know that I'm available when they go into the hospital. And now, I mean, it's just an outing. Now you're just in there and out there, I mean, it's just sliding doors. So that's not comforting to know that you have to go home alone. So there's a lot to think about here, and in terms of the quality of care that you provide, and then there's going over and above the call of duty. And I've done so much of that. I really have, and it's not about. I never charge for birthing, and I never charge for dying. That's my community work. I just basically get invited to go, someone's in the hospital. And then I have a gentleman right now who's going to be moved right to that facility just down the road here in May because his wife is going on retreat. So I go there to the house. I make a house call and do some ear candling for him. And then I also, in May, I'm booked to just go down the street here and visit him and do some Reiki for him. And his eyes just sparkle, because he can't speak anymore. But he used to be the labor minister at one time here in Canada, in Saskatchewan. Yeah, and I've known him for a long time. But, these are the over and above the duties that you can do, but I don't charge for those services. Yeah.
When you're going in to work with someone to do Reiki, are you doing like the traditional hand placements? Is that what you follow? Yeah.
I've done one as long as 7 hours. A woman was dying from La Loche, and the family was in Calgary, and they said, "Can you get to the hospital till we get there?" And I said, "Sure." So I stood there and did Reiki on her consistently till the family got there. 7 hours. And same with birthing. Like one of the husbands said, "I've never seen anybody stand there so long, except to go to the bathroom."
So
but I did Reiki that long. Yeah. So I think that, it's having that hand, know that comfort is there.
Yeah.
And those are over and above the call of duty. But I think that that's what this kind of work is. There's no, like, babies don't make appointments. I know that much. And so I've had enough of them. I asked my own. But you see, the thing is too, is we like to give the services that we didn't receive. But you learn as you've been around, I've been in healthcare 64 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to mention about the Tamara House?
I phoned some of the older elders in the project, and you know what they said to me? They said, a lot of projects have a lifespan. And so 20 years or more of this situation is that we have to learn to sort of celebrate what we've been given, celebrate the relationships that we've had. And now when I was at Westside Community Clinic, a lot of those women basically came there for Reiki or reflexology. And I'll never forget, this is really interesting. This woman was breastfeeding her 2-year-old, and he was breastfeeding and trying to talk to me at the same time. And because he would just lift his mom's shirt up, and he was trying, and she came to see me for Reiki, and he was basically breastfeeding and talking to me at the same time. Milk was running down her hair, and it was so cute. But basically, they felt comfortable in coming to Westside Community Clinic because they knew. And I have one woman, Irene Fraser. She still comes to me in Saskatoon here at my clinic here. And she knows me from Tamara's House, and she knows me from Westside Community Clinic. So I think we carry that persona with us. And so there's humor, there's people that you basically connect with, and it's a connection. and they basically, that sense of healing, and they feel that more comfort in moving forward and getting normalcy in their life again. We have one woman that was at Tamara's House is now working for SGI. So she basically did a lot of healing that way, and she was sexually abused by a brother. And she wrote a book about it, actually. So that was part of her healing. So everyone heals in their own way.
Yeah.
So in my second book that I wrote, there's people there that wrote their stories and their testimonials, and that's part of their healing. So it's not my story, it's their story. And that's what you have to celebrate.
And so you're writing a book, or you're pretty well done your book, right? So good. Well, thank you again, Flo.
You're welcome.
We'll wrap it up there. And yes, all the best to your new chapter coming in.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's just in the middle of being. It's about the West Side Community Clinic. It's about the street women, and I had 16 women in my group, and it's called The Richness of Poverty. And those women basically, are now wrote their stories, but also I taught some different classes about how they could heal and help themselves, and explain to them what all the different modalities are. But also we would feed their children supper, and then they would it was a sense that one night a week that they could come and have some normalcy. And then those are the workshops that I'm publishing, because I don't want them to sit on a shelf.
Yeah.
We've got enough information sitting on shelves. So that's basically why I chose to write that third book, because that information will help someone. And also, I think the thing is if you don't, that's my way of giving back and releasing some of the anger that I had about the justice system. But in the meantime, I went back to the justice system and asked for a screen for the courthouse. And so about 5 years ago, I had a client of mine who was she had mental health issues from Kindersley, and I saw the screen work for the first time. And I did Reiki treatments on her before she sat in the stands. So I saw Reiki work, and then also I saw my screen work for the first time.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's only going to be more people in the future that need a screen. So, yeah.
That she didn't know that the perpetrator was behind the screen. And he had sexually abused her 99 times. He was a massage therapist. But also, I think the thing here is the fact that you're not only helping this young woman, but her family felt that, that there was a connection between all of us. But also, I think we're teaching the court system to behave differently. Mm-hmm. And that's part of this whole learning thing, is we have to look on the brighter side of things, what is done for the community, not just for our own, that I won, and I did this, you know what I mean? That's not what this is about. It's mostly about how we're teaching the court system how to behave differently. Mm-hmm. There are people that have all these insecurities, and jail isn't for everybody. I mean, we're incarcerating people at the drop of a hat. And if we could do some healing, I spoke at Willow Creek. It's outside of Saskatoon. I spoke there as well. But I mean, the warden bought one of my cookbooks for each one of the houses at Willow Creek. So it's interesting how we can carry a message in different ways. We have these gifts that we don't share. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would have never in God's green earth thought that I would be where I am today, because I too have a past. And, I changed, I sort of, that's part of my healing. is now to outwardly help other people.
And that just like that really inspires me to do more work in my community.
Yeah.
You know, like
Absolutely.
all right. So Amanda's gonna take us out with the card pull today. So what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm using the Lightseers Tarot deck, and I got the King of Swords and the Strength card. So for a lot of you are sitting in kind of, or you actually need to be sitting in stillness right now and sitting with your thoughts. There's a lot of strength when we find the quiet and let our mind kind of quiet down and take out all that extra noise. I got the Two of Swords with it. So a lot of you could be dealing with a lot of mental fatigue. I'm hearing the word mental fatigue, or being struggling to make a decision, or else you're torn between two things and you're not too sure which route to take. But the key for this is to sit with yourself and find that inner strength, because you can make hard choices. And this almost feels like it's going to be a little bit difficult, or what if this is the wrong one? And it could even be something big. I'm even hearing someone who's even debating, like, should I quit my job? So right? Nobody else is going to be able to tell you if that's the way to do it. But I also got it with the Page of Swords in reverse. And then I got the 10 of Swords and the 7 of Swords. So a lot of swords energy, which is all about thinking and decisions and things like that. So don't ever make decisions when we're feeling emotional. Or if somebody else is influencing us. Remember, nobody else has stake in the game like you do. So it's so easy for someone like me or your friend to be like, oh, yeah, you should be following your passion and take the leap and you're going to do it. And but unless they're the ones living in your shoes, really make sure that you are taking the time and really thinking things through. It's a really big deal, especially if you're planning on making like really big shifts. And watch out for kind of maybe people who don't have your best interests at heart. That 7 of Swords is kind of that sneaky energy, or kind of that squawking in the ear, and maybe not having your best interests at the forefront. And then for like a solution and resolution, I actually see that some of you are going to start actually going in a new creative endeavor. I got the Page of Pentacles and then I got the Ace of Swords. So either you're going to start looking at things in a whole different light, and maybe getting, what's the word I'm thinking of? Some inspiration and some new feelings on how to rotate and shift things, and things that are going to get more exciting again. It almost feels like you're going to be out of this drought. I'm seeing somebody who's like walking the desert and you're like, when is this ever going to end? It feels like I've been walking and there's no respite anywhere. So I'm seeing that people who kind of get that creative muse going, and then all of a sudden they're shaking things up and they're looking at things from a different angle. And then it like sparks all that creativity again. And then the words start flowing out onto the paper and you get over that writer's block. So just, if this is you, make sure sometimes it is better for us just to walk away. It's better for us just to take a time out, to sit with ourselves. We have so much inner strength in us that we don't need to outsource this. Like, tap into your own ATM machine, and the good things are going to come. It looks like a really positive outcome. So if this is you and you're kind of in the decision fatigue and what do I do? And I thought this was it, and now it's not, and all the things. And I've been going on this path for too long to maybe call it in. Just know that things are going to shake up and maybe pivot slightly for you. So it'll be a good new fresh energy coming in.
Oh, I love that message. I resonated with bits and pieces of it too, with what's going on in my life. And, there is something sacred about going through a big change and keeping that your cards close to your heart. Like, just telling your inner circle and just keeping that private. I just feel I really love that. That's what I am doing right now. And when I'm ready to share, it's like when like I'm totally 100% in. But when you're going through the thick of it, just keeping that to yourself is, yeah, that's really sacred, but cool.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, hopefully some or bits and pieces like Christy, hopefully it resonated. But
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mental, get out of the head. And I love tune into your ATM machine. Oh, I love that.
yeah,
Yes. All right. And our Reiki circle for June, we haven't picked a date yet, but we will post that on Instagram. So stay posted or tuned in for that. We will share that date when that's all locked in. And you can find us on Instagram, of course, at Living the Reiki Life. And we have our personal pages as well. Mine, you can find me at The Birch Soul.
And I am Reiki with Manda. And I've slowly started opening up my schedule again. I got some distant appointments available, and I have in person by request. So, and I am still teaching, also kind of by request. So nothing really scheduled. But yeah, reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback or just anything you have.
Yeah, we love getting messages about how the episode landed, or if you have any questions about recommendations on books or anything. Yeah, shoot us a message. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you in a month.
Bye.
1,